Hello and welcome back to Adventurous Way. Today we are going to be conquering our nemesis, this absolutely giant log that is too big for our sawmill because we want to get it on there and get it milled. Our focus this year has been getting utilities on site. Our water, our electric and our septic are all finally done. And now it's time to turn our attention back to milling. We had really wanted to get to this earlier on in the year, but the reality was that there was so much going on up here, and specifically we didn't have any flat space that was going to stay flat space. Finally, about a month ago, this area was cleared and graded and we knew that we could get in here and start using it. So over the last week or two, we've been getting the mill set up and working hard to get these piles done because time is running out. We have only got a week or two before we're going to be out of here for the winter. And in that time, we want to mill as much as possible. But more specifically, we want to have everything set up so that come spring, when we get back, we can hit the ground running and get milling. So what we've been really focusing our efforts on is not so much milling lots and lots of lumber, but getting the infrastructure set up, getting the workflow in process. So behind me here, you can see we've got a ton of different piles of lumber. It has been a painstaking effort to get those level and flat on the blocks.
And we wanted to level them now while the ground is soft, because we won't be able to do that in the spring when it's frozen. We also wanted to put the wood chips down on that whole area under the piles so it doesn't get muddy when it rains a lot.
Yeah, this whole area behind you may look flat, but it's actually built up probably about 3 or 4 feet in some areas. So it's really been pretty heavily graded as part of the site work that's going on.
And that area, we're not going to be using it anyway because it's close to the boundary and we can't build anything there anyways. So it's a great spot for the lumber piles that will not have to move.
We do not want to move these again.
No.
There's also some space here behind me where you can see our solar kiln base, the floor assembly. We actually built that a year ago. And honestly, we feel really bad that we haven't been able to get to it this year. We've just had so many other things going on and it's been hard to find time to work on it. Plus find somewhere flat that we could put it to work on as well during this year. So we finally found a home for it. It's going to live just here. This is a nice, as you can probably see from the shadows on our faces, this is a pretty good south-facing spot. So it's going to live back here by the wood piles, a nice location out of the way, right next to where the sawmill will be as well, and near our lumber pile. So it's a nice kind of milling area that we've got set up.
But now for the task of today, to mill the largest pine that we have on this property.
Yeah, this pine came down when the driveway was put in, and this thing is huge. It has been sitting here about a year. We raised it up on some logs last year to keep it off the ground, but we are a little bit nervous about it for a number of reasons. First, look at the size of this thing. It's about 30 inches diameter at the fat end, and I think still about 26 or something at the other end. The capacity of our mill is 26 inches, and we put a log through the other day that was 25.5 inches, and that took some work. That was really tricky to do. So this is going to max out the capacity of our sawmill. In fact, more than do that. We're going to have to find a way to trim this down to even get the sawmill to go over it. But before that, we've got a bigger problem. How do we get it on the sawmill? One of the reasons it's been sitting here for a year is we cannot move this thing. Just to get it up on these logs, we actually had to use our ramps from our equipment trailer and roll it up the ramps because this thing is way too heavy for our tractor. And we're nervous that even if we cut it in half of it will still be too heavy for our tractor. We won't know that though until we've started cutting into it.
Yeah, and it's not ideal to left the pine log for a year, but it is what it is. So hopefully we'll have some good lumber out of it. There might be some bugs in the bark, but we'll see that when we open it up.
Yeah, so we did leave the bark on. In hindsight, we probably should have stripped all that bark off as soon as we could. We didn't. We know there's bugs under there. We also know there's bugs managed to get into the end as well. You can see this hole in the center here. I actually chopped this cookie off the end because I found a pile of sawdust here one day and there were carpenter ants inside eating their way through that log. So I cut the cookie off to try and get rid of them. We sprayed some stuff there to hopefully deter anything else getting in there, but who knows how far they got in, how much damage they've done and everything else. So this log may not be in perfect condition. It is just pine. We're not talking about some fancy walnut log or something here. So if we don't get a ton of usable stuff out of here, it's not the end of the world, but we would really, really like to. So what's the plan? Well, as you can see, this log is pretty well blocked in because we knew it wasn't going anywhere, so it made sense to put things in front of it. Now we've got to get some of those things out of the way. A couple of those things are fine, the planters and things, no big issue. This rock, however, is a problem. This is one of the beautiful rocks that came out of the ground when we were doing the site work just up here and excavating for the utility building. But that thing is massive and heavy. It weighs thousands and thousands of pounds, way more than our tractor can lift, and honestly, probably far more than our tractor can even drag out of the way.
So that's staying there.
So that's staying there. That's going nowhere, which means we got to get the log out from behind it. Our thinking is this. We know that we can't lift that log if it is full length.
Which is 17 feet.
Which is 17 feet, yeah. We don't know, even if we cut it in half, if we'll be able to lift it. We did manage to lift that log the other day that was 11 feet long and was about 26 inches. So we know that at 11 feet, we are going to be really pushing our luck to try and lift that thing. That was so heavy with the tractor, the forks couldn't, like the loader couldn't actually lift it to the height of the sawmill. And I had to go and lift the forks as well, just to add another 100 pounds or so of kind of upward force to get it high enough to get on the sawmill. So that thing really maxed out the tractor. So even at 11 feet, I'm still doubtful that we're going to be able to lift this, which means we're probably going to end up getting it down to about 8.5 feet, which is the length we've been using to mill all our 8 feet lumber. The rationale being that you've got an extra 6 inches so that if you do get any cracks and things at either end, you can cut off a bit later once it's dried and you've still got an 8-foot board. So if we only end up with something that's 8.5 feet long from here, we're okay with that.
Yes.
That's okay. And honestly, if we get nothing out of this, we've lost nothing. It's a log that we got for free when the driveway was put in.
And it's a little learning experience. We'll know better next time.
We will. So the strategy is this. We're going to clear as much as we can out of the way, and then we're basically going to chop off from either end and see what we've got. We're going to try and take the middle section out. We figure that is the section that's going to be the best condition. That's furthest away from any cracked ends, furthest away from any insects that are going through the ends, like the carpenter ants. We may still have some damage. I suspect we probably do from bugs under the bark. That's okay. We'll deal with that when we get there. But we'll try and get to a log in the middle that is about 11 feet long, and then we'll see if we can lift it. Yeah. I doubt we can. And if so, we'll take another kind of section off to get it down to about 8.5 feet. We are going to try and take it off in about 16-inch increments, thereabouts, simply so that we can use that pine and we can put it through a log splitter and turn it into firewood. For sugaring and things like that, this pine wood would be great. So that's the plan. Once we've got a length we're happy with, then we can start to work out how on earth we get this thing lifted and on the sawmill. I suspect it's going to be a combination of using our small axe to chip away the bark, to try and just reduce that diameter a little bit,
maybe trim
and maybe the chainsaw just to give it a bit of a haircut on some of those lumpier sections.
Yep.
And fingers crossed, we can get this done. I looked around and the forks are gone. So low speed, 4-wheel drive, diff on, load and low. Okay, so 1.4, yeah? Okay.
We still saw some tracks of carpenter ants, so we decided to take another 16 inches off. Last year we did use anchor seal to seal the ends of the log, so the cracking actually was less than a few inches. So the both ends now look good, and we decided to take 8.5 and a 5 foot piece. Well, great news! We can lift the 8.5 foot log with a tractor, and we can lift it to the height that we should be able to get it on the sawmill. So now we're trying to get some bark off it. At the thin end it's over 26 inches diameter, and at the fat end it's more than 28 inches in diameter.
This is actually coming off really nicely, and then I'm hoping we can use the tractor just to turn this log over, and we'll get all the bark underneath.
So after we took the bark off, the larger end is 26.5 inches. And the small end is 25.2 inches.
Well, so far things are going pretty good. We've got the log on the sawmill. This is as high as this sawmill will go. It's a cut of about 23 inches up from the bunks. We have shimmed the log at this end just to try and get it a little bit closer to flat. It's going to take off a good chunk on top of this slab, but going down there are some lower sections, so it should even that out. Fingers crossed we're in luck here. The log is pretty centered on the bunks. It looks like the throat will clear either side. We've run into that problem before. Looks like it's going to be okay here. If we can make this cut, I'm hoping we can flip it either 90 or even 180 and get another cut. And once we can get it to 4 square sides this size, we are golden. I probably should have started this before I raised the saw head all the way up here. It's going to be a bit tricky to start now. Horrible angle. Even though it's early November here in Vermont, it's actually 60-something degrees. Yesterday was a record-setting day. It hit 76 degrees. Crazy, crazy weather for November. We've done all our daily checks on the sawmill, all the fluids. I have turned on, I tend to turn off the lubricant drip, so I turn that back on. The engine is warmed up now. I got my gloves on. We got our sawdust bucket in place, which works really well for collecting the sawdust. We are ready to mill this giant log.
So now we get to see what's inside the log.
Oh. We'll save this. This is still a big slab. We'll save this. And we can throw that back on the mill later and probably get something out of that. It's probably thick enough in the middle to get a 1x or something out of it. But here we go. This is the star of the show. Just look at this. This is absolutely beautiful. There's a little bit of staining down the sides, right near the edge, but there's some really nice clear wood in here. You can see where I stopped the saw blade briefly, wondering if I was going to get past at the end, and it turned out to be less than 1/4 of an inch. A couple of knots in here from where the branches I guess were, but this is looking absolutely beautiful. So our plan with this log, really, we're going to get some slabs out of it because we think that'd be super nice, but really what we want to do is get some 1x material out of this. This is going to be siding potentially for us. We need some 1x8 and 1x3 for some board and batten siding, and maybe even get some 2x material out of here as well that we can use for projects like picnic benches and those sorts of things. So yeah, we'll take a couple of slabs. I think we might come down a little bit before we take slabs, try and get some of the wider ones in the middle. But this is looking pretty nice. Well, that was fun. We've managed to get the log rotated around 90 degrees. We thought about taking another slab off the top, or a first slab I should say off the top after that first cut. But the problem is that as the log gets wider as you go down, it actually won't pass through the throat on the sawmill. So we had no choice but to rotate it. We decided to rotate it 90 degrees. That'll let us get a second face that is perpendicular to the first. So it is now, with the first face is now vertical on the far side up against the log stops. It was a bit of a challenge to turn it. The cant made that actually made it not too bad. With the tractor we're able to support it, hold it in position while I put the log clamps in. Remember, this thing is heavy. It's probably 1,000 pounds of log that all it wants to do is roll now. But we've got it supported. We're now going to do a pass across here, take, again, the thinnest slice we can off, which is just limited by the maximum height of the sawmill. Take that off. At that point, we then have 2 flat sides. We're not going to try and get any sort of double live edge slabs off this one, we decided. It was just too big and too difficult on our sawmill. So instead, we're just going to try and turn it into a cant, and then we can mill it down however we want. Here's a top tip for you. If you are going to max out your sawmill here on the saw head, don't have it all the way at the very top when you make your cut. Back off just a fraction, and that way when you, so I backed off to about there. That gives me maybe about 1/8 of an inch or so. That way when I want to bring the saw head back across, it doesn't get stuck on the log anywhere if that thing has moved or there is any kind of a lump in that. Now we've got to get this slab off. Oh, this one's bigger. Diana, this is a 2-person job.
Okay.
I can't move this. You got it? So this is where now, having the saw head raised up all the way to its max, I should just be able to get that to go across. Our little trick with the bucket, hanging it on the side of the saw head there using a bungee cord, works pretty well to collect most of the sawdust. We're transferring it over to a big bulk bag over there. Each of these cuts is about half filling that 5-gallon bucket. So just in these 2 cuts alone, we've generated about 5 gallons of sawdust. That did not go to plan. It was really hard as the log wanted to roll over. There was a knot in the middle. It was kind of pivoting about that. And I was really nervous if we pulled it too far this way with the tractor, it would slip off the bunks this way. In the end, I thought I could do it. I thought I could roll it over the cant, and I did, but it kind of had too much momentum and it rolled all the way off the back side of the sawmill. And we can't get in there with the tractor. We don't really want to move the sawmill, so we're going to see if we can chain it up with the cinch chain, drag it into this clearing here, lift it up, and try again. Hold it. And stop. Crisis averted. We have the log back on the sawmill and we can get back to milling it now. The plan is to put one more flat edge on top, flat face on top. Because of the way the logs are into now, we're then going to actually rotate the log backwards, kind of towards the tractor, which isn't the way we would normally do it, but I actually think will be better in this case because it can't fall off again. There'll be a tractor there to catch it if it tries to fall. So one flat edge on top. There aren't any log stops, there's log stops on the far side. There aren't any clamps holding it in because the clamps won't quite reach because of the width of it right now, but the log is not going to move anywhere while that's cutting anyway. Ready?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just hold there a second. Having looked at this log and decided what we want to do, I think we're just going to sort of slice this down into 1-inch thick slices, and then we can turn those into our 1x8s and 1x3s that we'll need for siding. In some ways it feels like a shame to take such a big log like this and just turn it into such small material. On the other hand, we've already got some good size slabs over there. We don't have 2 live edges on here of any particular width, so to get like a live edge slab of some form isn't really going to work. And we don't have a ton of need for 2x. We may grab a couple of 2x's out of here just as we get lower down, but for the most part we're just going to stick with the 1x material from this log.
They look so pretty, I almost want to leave them as 1x slab. So we look through each board and determine what cuts to make. And then for this batch that's on the sawmill now, we'll do an 8-inch board, an 8-inch board, and then 3-inch board from the bottom. And then other ones will do a 3-inch board on the bottom and then an eighth.
So, slight change of plans there. The idea had been to go from the bottom a 1x8, a 1x8 and a 1x3, starting that top cut first. That went fine, and we then managed to get the 1x3 off. And then we hit a problem. Our sawmill can't cut deep enough to get a 1x8. There's not enough space between the blade and the underside of the saw head, essentially. It's about 7.5 inches, so it's just not quite enough for a full 1x8. Which is what we wanted. Not a problem. Instead, we decided to cut some slightly different cuts out of there. Rather than doing a 1x8 up there, we went for 2 1x3s and a 1x2. It was a bit of a shame. 1x8s need slightly larger logs to get those wider boards out of. So it was going to be really nice to get all those 1x8s out of it. We still got one 1x8 out of each one. Would have been nice to get 2. The real dilemma though now is the other boards that we've got. We were planning to get a 1x3 out of the middle. There's some kind of cracking through the middle where it's near the center of the log. And we were going to kind of focus that in a 1x3 that could be a bit of a janky board. We could use it for farm projects and things. But that means milling a 1x8 off the top, which we can't do. So we need to have a think now about what we want to do there, rather than trying to get a 1x8, 1x3 and a 1x8 out of each board. What a day it's been. That log was a bit of a beast, but I think we've done a pretty good job chunking that thing down and really filling up this pile that you can see behind us here.
We got 6.5 layers of 1-inch material, and the pile is 4 feet wide.
Yeah, so a few things that were surprising about today. We thought we were going to really struggle with that big log, knowing that it was going to really max out not just the sawmill but the tractor as well, was making us a little nervous about processing it, which is why we'd been putting it off partly. And I was surprised. It actually went pretty smoothly. We were able to get it on the mill. I lifted the tractor and things.
Except when we tipped it over.
Other than rolling over the other side of the mill, that was not ideal. But even that, to be honest, it only took us about 10-15 minutes to get it back on again and back up and running, no harm done. In terms of the yield, I'm pretty pleased with that. I think that's pretty awesome. To say it's been sitting there for a year, there's really very little in terms of damage. I think nearer the ends we would have found probably a little bit more cracking and blue staining and things, but the only blue stain we really found inside was near the edges.
Yeah, and only really on one side.
Yeah, which I don't know, probably the side that was on the ground for a few months before we managed to raise it up maybe last year.
Yep.
In addition to the pile, we've also got the slabs that you can see behind me here. There's still some of those that have got some good kind of meat on them still that we'll try and get off at another time. But yeah, that went really well. I'm pleased with that. Sawmill did well, tractor did well. We're also generating a ton of sawdust. The yard bag of sawdust over there is almost full. And so we do need to find something to do with all of that. And composting it and just letting it decay is probably not the best thing because we're already doing that with the wood chips. So we do need to find a good way to use that.
It's been unseasonably warm and really nice weather in early November. So we're using every day that we can to mill lumber. And we'll continue that for I don't know, a couple more days, maybe a week, and then we'll have to get ready to leave for the winter.
The weather forecast the next week is still looking dry. It is going to go cold the next day or two, and then I think warm up again, which is just crazy. But we are making the most of it, like Dinah says. The clock is ticking. We really want to get as much done as we can. I'm really happy we've got these piles in place. There are a few logs that we want to get to, so they're not sitting around for too long. But I will say, after today's experience and seeing the condition of this log after sitting there for a year,
not too bad.
It makes me less worried about logs that might have to sit there through the winter and we won't get to until spring. So fingers crossed we'll get done what we can, but we are certainly not going to finish that pile. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video, seeing us mill this absolutely giant log on our Woodland Mills HM126 sawmill. And if you did, then make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and we'll see you in the next video.